So earlier this spring, the CSIS Energy and National Security Program conducted 3 workshops to look at the impact of oil and gas development in the United States. The first workshop really focused on oil development and the impact of U.S. supply to the rest of the world. Third workshop looked at LNG and global gas supply. And the second workshop, which is the one I want to talk to you about today, focused on the challenges and mitigating the risks associated with onshore oil and gas development. A decade ago, oil and gas development in the United States, we were heading in a different direction totally. Shale gas accounted for less than 5% of domestic production. Today, it represents between 65 and 70% of U.S. output. Same is true of the oil story. Tight oil in the United States now accounts for over half of domestic output. So this unconventional supply has been nothing less than phenomenal in a very short period of time. But as we ramped up that production, a lot of challenges also emerged. And emerged in the way of new risk to environmental, health, safety, and societal risks associated with large-scale development. And that's what I want to talk to you about today. So this workshop basically focused on 3 areas: water resource management and preservation of clean water resources, methane emissions and eliminating or reducing them, and eliminating and mitigating the risks of seismic interactions and seismic events associated with both fracking and with injection of groundwater at large scale. In the session, we looked at ways of identifying both the risks and what's been done over the course of the last 10 years to develop both regulatory activity and operational procedures so that we could mitigate those risks. We looked at standards and best practices, we looked at gaps in the regulations, and then wanted to identify better ways for a path going forward since we're going to increase production over the next several decades. On the water side, water resource management for us was kind of a key because there was concern early in the fracking process about contamination of freshwater reservoirs. And what the workshop showed was that with well integrity and proper well design, you could protect water resources. But we also looked at other things, the scale of resources, especially water in arid regions. We looked at recycling, reuse, transport, alternative use of water, and then disposal, especially of the brine and the flowback water that comes from a fracking process, which actually led to a lot of the seismic concerns because we're re-injecting large volumes of water in high pressure into these reservoirs and injection wells. The second issue dealt with methane emissions. Methane, as you know, is a potent greenhouse gas, and the concern was that we're venting a lot of it into the atmosphere in association with oil and gas operations. So over the years, we developed regulatory and best practices operationally in the field to reduce methane emissions. And so that was the focus of the second workshop panel. And then finally, we looked at seismic events. You've all heard about seismic activity in Oklahoma and elsewhere. When water is injected into the subsurface, it's a natural lubricant, causes the rocks to shift in certain cases. So how can you mitigate that when you look at oil and gas development? And so we brought in state and federal regulators, operations people with hands-on practice and experience in the field, policymakers, academics, to look through the various ways of how we can mitigate those risks so that oil and gas development can go forward. So we hope you'll take a look at the workshop results and the papers that we presented, and then also be available to contact us at csis.org and the Energy National Security Program. Hope it's useful.